Linda's minutes, she's describing how the material is hard, like we're pushing down harder material to younger grades. It's not the opposite. And the recommendation for some kids to wait until 9th grade for algebra, and she's not recommending that most kids wait, just some kids should wait. She didn't think it would be a large proportion different than now, maybe 10% more that are now currently taking in 8th grade might want to wait till 9th grade. But the reason for that is because the stuff in 8th grade is like hard. It's like Algebra 2 stuff, some of it. And so, yeah, that's been pushed down, so the math has gotten harder. So waiting isn't mean they're waiting to like learn harder math until a later age. It just means they're taking it at the appropriate time for them, developmentally, because the math is harder at a younger age. So I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
It doesn't help much when all you can say is stuff. You have to be definitive and explain what you're talking about. And well, it's more stuff and it's more complicated. I think you have an obligation to present this to the public and to the board. And to say stuff, that does not describe what we're talking about.
If I may, Linda actually just said what the differences were in the program going forward. I believe in her minutes, I can't recall the word for word, but she said, here is, you know, the type of topics that are now being taught in 8th grade, which used to be taught in 9th grade and with a variety of the other levels. And I know, and not to belabor the point, but I believe at the last curriculum meeting we discussed, you know, how people are doing in math at this level. Certainly something that I know was interested, you know, we were all interested in is if there are people who are, you know, struggling and what can we do to address it and how can we improve things going forward for next year, and that's something we'll talk about going forward. But I believe the minutes say very specifically what the topics are, which is funny to me because I generally haven't thought about those topics in a very, very long time. Like, oh, that's what that is. So I noticed it, and I noticed you read it again today. So.
And there'll be more information with details at the next meeting where I report out on the meeting from last week because we continue discussing that.
Okay, so now we're up to advocacy. And we met with the PTO presidents on, do I have the wrong ones here? I guess I forgot to change the date on top here. We met at the beginning of December, whatever the date was, the first Monday in December. And basically all we talked about was park testing. And then we met in our committee afterwards and all we talked about was park testing. So I'm not going to get into any of that right now because I was going to say something else about park testing in a couple minutes. So that was the advocacy committee. Basically lots and lots of questions and concerns about park testing. I don't think there's any latest on that. Oh, you have one?
I have it. Yeah, I just really briefly. The Somerset County Ed Services Commission Board met on December 4th, and there were just 2 items. One is the Career Center, which has been underway for about 8 years, is now built. There's 3 shops, learning labs, a gymnasium, and offices. It's not occupied yet, but I will vouch the building is definitely there. And I was going to get a tour, but the superintendent didn't have a key, so oh well, maybe next time. And the second item was the superintendent of the Somerset County Ed Services Commission is currently in talks with the Hunterdon County Ed Services Commission to merge special education transportation. My other liaison report has to do with the Municipal Alliance, and I just wanted to mention a couple of brief things. On November 20th, I attended a Municipal Alliance presentation on e-cigarettes, marijuana, and tobacco. The material on e-cigarettes was especially interesting because they are relatively new. Just tonight, on the way over here, there was a news report. The National Institutes of Health did a survey on high school students, and it turns out that the number of students that are now using e-cigarettes has been increasing, while the number of students using regular cigarettes has been dropping. The Municipal Alliance is going to be getting the slides from the e-cigarette presentation. The Municipal Alliance also met briefly on December 2nd. The Dr. Bradley October 22nd presentation on drug and alcohol use in teens is now online. If you didn't get a chance to see it, you can access it on the Rich PTO website. And they are also starting to plan their 2015 activities. The Community and Crisis Group, which has been focusing on prescription pill and heroin addiction, is having a town hall meeting at 7 p.m. on January 12th at Dolce in Basking Ridge. And that's
Can I ask a question? Sure. With the Somerset County Ed Services Commission. You said they were considering merging the bus routes for special education for our county and Hunterdon County, is that right? Do we think there might be some savings to be found there?
Well, they're
We
interested.
pay a lot for
Yeah,
special ed
they're
transportation.
making some savings, yeah, just because of our volume. Is that right? Mike?
I want to make two observations. One, your comments on e-cigarettes, and the fact that you discussed the fact that maybe their use is increasing, and regular cigarette use is decreasing. That was informative. Now, the comments before on park, we discussed park, we discussed park, we discussed park. I didn't learn anything from that.
Because I said I'm going to talk about it in a minute, and I'm going to tell you.
I
what
learned something from your comment on e-cigarettes. I didn't learn anything from, we talked about park, we talked about park, we talked about park. And there's a difference in communication. And if you don't go beyond mentioning a topic or mentioning a word, we're not going to benefit from it. You have to explain what the committee was doing, and that's what I'm asking for. And just to mention a word in the minutes or what have you is not doing the job. Your e-cigarette thing was excellent, and that's what I'm asking for across the board in all the presentations.
Anyone else? Vicky?
Oh, the county.
The Somerset BOE county meeting. So as if Linda doesn't do enough work, she's now been nominated to be the second.
No, I'm going to be an alternate to the board of directors. I walked in and they asked me if I would
Has she agreed?
give some extra minutes.
And she thinks she's not going to do any, which we don't know. But thank goodness she was.
So
able
anyway,
to-
I can report on those when I actually go.
Okay.
I'm only an alternate.
For now. I thought it was second.
No, that's not a job. It's just a title.
Okay, on the agenda, we have public forum, but before we get to public forum, and I open that up, I wanted to make some comments about park. So Mike now will explain what I was going to say about park. Before I start, I just want to introduce our board attorney, Denise Gutierrez. She's here tonight. She was here in executive session for a couple other matters, and also she's here because we've been discussing park and our district's concerns about how to handle some of the park issues with her. And so she's here, and maybe questions will arise where we might need to ask her later on. I just wanted to let everyone know who's here tonight, who came out to hear about park, that our board we share a lot of your concerns about park testing. Before I talk about park testing, I just wanted to, this is my own personal view, not the rest of the board's, just give my thoughts on keeping things straight between park testing and the Common Core, because they're two very different things. The Common Core has been around in our district for a couple of years. It took a couple of years to fully implement the Common Core, but this is our third full year of Common Core in many subjects. And there have been some glitches, and as math was mentioned before, that's where many of the issues have arisen. But in general, the transition went very smoothly. The complaints and stress that we're hearing from people this year really flared up when park testing hit the scene. New Jersey's always had a very rigorous curriculum compared to most states. And so when the Common Core came to New Jersey, it wasn't as drastic of a change as it was for some states in terms of rigor, and in particular for our district because we are more rigorous than the average district in New Jersey. It wasn't a drastic change in terms of rigor for what the students were used to. There were changes in language arts, there were changes, in math. Some of the glitches in math really hit the students who got Common Core kind of in the middle, not the students who started with it from the beginning, but the kids who were kind of thrown into this new curriculum in middle school, for example. So we acknowledge that there's been some transition issues with the Common Core, but in general, we think that the Common Core, at least I think the Common Core, is more rigorous and that that's a good thing. So yes, things could be improved. Certain textbooks, there are problems in the textbook could be better or whatever, but the Common Core is not the issue here for most of us. The issue here is the park testing. We had actually discussed passing a resolution tonight. We discussed this starting a few weeks ago, that would have a lot of the elements of some of the resolutions that are flying around out there. Mainly that our board agrees with, we all agree that park is an unfunded mandate, and a large one at that. We've spent in our district somewhere in the vicinity of $1 million on getting ready for park testing between the technology, upgrading the infrastructure, and other expenses that come along with it. Not only was it unfunded, but we didn't have a lot of warning that it was coming, which made it very difficult for budgeting purposes. So that's something that we are upset about, and we've made our feelings about that known to the state on numerous occasions. Another thing we all agree on is that the amount of testing is excessive. It's too many days, and it takes too much away from instruction. We don't really understand why it needs to be that many days of testing. We also don't like the timing of the windows of the testing because aside from the issues at Ridge with AP tests and things like that, it just doesn't seem to make sense to test in March for the entire year's material and then test again in May. We don't really understand why they chose to do it that way. So we have issues with the excessive amount of testing and the timing of testing. Many of us, I'm not speaking for everyone now, have issues with the fact that the data is going to be used the first year for teacher evaluation and for anything else having to do with students. Parents in our district have expressed concerns about whether this park data is going to be used for graduation or for student placement. I just want to try to reassure people who are here that we have multiple measures and ways of assessing in our district, and we've always had in-district assessments, and we have map testing. We have, obviously, teachers have all kinds of ways of assessing children, and we would never just take one test, piece of data to make an important decision about a student without looking at all the other factors. And the state has also said that there's alternate ways for graduation. So I don't think that should cause panic for anyone individually, but I think the issue of the fact that the data is going to be used the first year is problematic to many of us. So I just wanted to make that point. The other issue that we have discussed is what to do about students who want to refuse the test. And this is where it gets kind of tricky. My children are going to take the tests, and I personally don't feel that refusing the test is the best way to protest to the state. I think there's other ways, but we understand that there's going to be parents who choose to refuse the test. And our district needs to have a response to it. The last memo that was issued from the DOE said that we must administer the tests and that we should refer to our attendance policies. To us, this implies that we need to follow regular attendance policies, including having the students take park makeup during the park makeup windows that we have scheduled, that we have told the state that we're going to have. This could include missing a lot of days of school if people kept their student home for all of that. We've heard we've heard it said that districts can decide how to handle test refusals, but we've never seen that in writing from the DOE that we are allowed to decide as a district. And so we are worried that if we passed a resolution or did anything to do with how to handle refusals, we could get in trouble with the state. A week and a half ago, I contacted the state Board of Education President, Mark Biedron, to express our concerns because we had parents, asking us about test refusal and how that would be handled. And I explained to him that all the districts that I've talked to are confused, and there's a few districts who have passed resolutions, but most districts just don't know what to do with this or how to handle it. There's conflicting information out there, even in terms of historically of how it's been handled with New Jersey Ask, because this isn't the first state testing we've ever had. I mean, it's no different than if someone wanted to refuse New Jersey Ask. It just has kind of come to a head right now. So I told him that we need to have answers to certain questions, which include, do districts actually have local control over how to handle the refusals, and how will a refusal be coded, and how will it affect the teacher evaluations or the school performance review and status if we have a lot of students refuse? And also, will the Department of Education put in writing a reassurance that our district will not be penalized due to students missing the test, whether it be financially or otherwise? So we want to know the answers to those questions. Mr. Biedron was very responsive, and Nick and I had 2 conference calls with him. He understands our concerns. He's speaking with the commissioner. The commissioner was getting sworn in, so he had spoken to him, but we weren't on the phone with him. We're planning a follow-up phone call with him to get answers to some of these questions. But until we get answers to those questions, we are not comfortable making any policy decisions or a resolution about how to handle park refusals. So I just wanted to get that out there, that we are doing everything we can to communicate with the state and to get clarification and to make our concerns known to the state. Resolutions, I don't know how much power they really hold. You know, if we wrote a resolution saying we don't like parks, it's an unfunded mandate, I don't know what good that does. We've already said it to them, but we're not, you know, we may end up passing a resolution with some of those items in it, you know, down the line, I don't know. But my kids are gonna take the park test, and I feel like there's ways that you can go to testify down in Trenton. Linda has made copies, I think they're down there somewhere, of all the addresses of people that you should write to, and also information about how to testify at the State Board of Education meeting, which is on January 7th. So that information is right there. And it's not there? Well, we'll get it to you. We'll get copies of it. The governor's task force is on the list, and that was appointed to look at Common Core and Park and make initial recommendations to the governor by the 31st of December, and then a final recommendation later in the school year. So that is supposed to be coming out really soon too. So hopefully between that task force and the State Board of Education meeting on January 7th, we'll have more clarification soon about how the state's planning on handling this. Anyway, Nick, did you want to add anything to what I said?
Thank you, Robin. I think that was pretty comprehensive. I'm not so sure how much I can add to that we haven't talked about at the last board meeting. But, you know, the one thing that I kind of rambled on a little bit when we had a large group here in November was this issue of, you know, testing and curriculum. And, you know, I certainly agree with a lot of the sentiments that you just shared. I'm not sure I'd agree 100% on everything point for point. There's a lot going on, but certainly I can appreciate the amount of time that it takes to conduct assessments. But you know, and I can understand a lot of the frustrations that people have expressed and had about a lot of what you just described. But there's another side to it that does connect the Common Core to Park. I mean, they are two different things, but they go together too, because you do have assessment and you have curriculum, and we all know that assessment and curriculum are inherently tied together. And a lot of people talk about teaching to the test, and is teaching to the test a bad thing? Is it bad to see things come home that are related to a test that a child needs to take? And I would say that it's the quality of the materials that come home. It's the quality of what people are doing that matters. And you can't separate assessment and curriculum. A lot of people would say assessment drives instruction. If you are taking an AP class for physics or biology, aren't you going to do a lot of stuff related to AP physics and biology or what have you? You're preparing for an AP test, and it's challenging. And challenging things come home that the students are going to be working on to prepare for a test. And we shouldn't be surprised when we see that happening with respect to Park as well. Park is a test, but it's a test that's designed to test the curriculum that we're teaching. So while it's true that there are a lot of frustrating things out there and a lot of unknowns that I personally am withholding judgment on because I just don't know, nor does anyone else, how a lot of some of these things are going to play out, it can be frustrating. I can appreciate that. But with the frustration, there's also the other side of the coin that we're trying to accomplish something, and the test, if it proves to be a good test, if it proves to provide good information, may prove to be very useful for us. That remains to be seen. So as I've said several times in the past, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. I realize that there are growing pains that go along with it, and whatever happens, we will use the experience to try to make everything better going forward. I think that's what we always do. We try to learn from our experiences to make things better. I don't have anything else.
Okay, at this time I'd like to open public forum on non-agenda items. state your name and address and put it on the clipboard.
This meeting is extremely rich in content, and I almost don't even know where to begin. I came here to make 2 brief comments, and I just feel that after the conversation about algebra, that I have to comment on that as well. And I certainly don't want to limit my park comments to the 2 that I had planned at this point. First, let me just make a comment about the algebra program. My daughter is in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Likely that my 7th grade daughter will also be in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And I just want to give you a little bit of the parents' perspective about the change in this. I feel that this is directly related to Common Core implementation. I think that we should be honest and forthright with parents about the change that Common Core is causing to our math curriculum. I am interested to know the letters that I've seen that came out from the district don't mention anything about students. Is that me? Who had taken Algebra 1 in 7th grade. It's sort of obvious by its omission in all the documents that I've seen. And I just wonder, is that even going to be an option for some parents who have been for years very eager to have their students be that accelerated and be in Algebra 1 in 7th grade? But more so, how is it going to be determined that a child is suited for Math 8 versus Algebra 1? What test are we going to use that's going to determine that? Because what I saw in writing that came out from the district was simply that the teachers were going to make a recommendation. And we all know that that can't possibly be the only criterion on which a decision such as that is made for students. So I just wanted to say those things. And I also wanted to add, you know, I have a child who's in 11th grade, and I can remember so clearly, this is the 3rd iteration or 3rd change to the mathematics program since I've been in this district. And I can remember when he was in 8th grade and I went to the Ridge, the high school planning night, I forget what it's called, and sat there and listened as Marion Palumbo, the previous head of the math curriculum, stated that those students who were in Math 8 heading to algebra in 9th grade were actually the at-risk students and the remedial students. And so I want you to understand that there are still parents like me who are here who have high school and middle school and some even who have in all levels who've been getting such a different message for so many years, and really have been trying to help our students fit in where they fit in. But this is a big change to say that now what used to be viewed as remedial is going to be the standard. And I do think there are a lot of holes in how those students are going to be chosen for those levels, and I do think that, to Mr. Burns' point, it's important to share that with parents now and be forthright about how those decisions are going to be made. This is real time affecting our students right now, 2 of mine in particular. So I would like to know more about that. So that's all I need to comment about the algebra program. I wanted to say something about Park, and I do want to say that, yes, I'm glad Mr. Markarian related Common Core to Park because they are relatable. And I do think that what's happening is, as a result of Common Core, we are seeing an acceleration in the way in which material is taught. That is a firsthand experience. I watch it with my students, my children. I can see it. I hear it all over the place about how things are accelerating. And the reason that I've sort of concluded is that Park tests cover every element of the Common Core curriculum. This is different from New Jersey Ask, which only touched on certain elements of the curriculum through testing. And the teachers know this. I don't know how much the students know, but if you've looked at this, you realize that there is no recourse for these teachers other than to accelerate what previously might have been a differentiated approach to their teaching in the classroom. And the students are experiencing this in multiple ways, not just with the highs and lows, for example, in Algebra 2 and all the difficulties there, but also in having to do coursework starting in August or in July in order to be prepared for hitting the ground running in September, when previously they had a period of review that was 6 weeks long in the beginning of the year. This is going away. Common Core, for all its quirks and difficulties with the implementation, is definitely negatively impacting this district. And one that's so obvious is the PARCC test, but there are other ways that it's happening. And it's bearing out right now, and it's our responsibility as educators and as parents to really take a look at this and not just go to the state and share what our, why we're disconcerted with PARCC, but push back and tell them this is not healthy for our students. This is not education at its finest, the standard that we've had in Bernards Township. So I just wanted to make that statement about the link between Common Core and PARCC, as I understand it. Maybe there's more information that I'm going to get as we go along. I wanted to also mention, if this board is not aware, that right now, PARCC test prep is being done across grade levels in this district. Now, you may think that that's okay, and you may say that, well, they're just getting ready for something that's coming. But I don't know how you get ready for a test that nobody knows the content of. I know that people have been complaining to the board and to administration, and I guess my question is, how do we allow that to continue unchecked? How is it that we allow teachers, and I'm not complaining about the teachers, I know that they have their own motivation as to why they want this to be successful, but how is it that we allow teachers to right now spend time on test prep for an unidentified test that is not happening for months and take away instructional time from our students? I don't understand that. And what I really don't understand, and what is so irksome, is that many teachers are using these test prep tests as part of students' grades right now. And I find that unconscionable. I cannot understand how that is something that a parent is being asked to push back to the teacher on. I see that as the responsibility of this board and this administration to get this in check and make sure that you know what's going on in the field, so to speak, and that these teachers are asked to take a step back from utilizing core instructional time for important education topics. And with this PARCC test prep, I just feel that this board needs to do something about now. I'm asking you to do that. Test prep is not education. This is not a diagnostic test. There was mention of how this PARCC test was going to be used, and maybe in years to come, to Mr. Markarian's point, this might be a useful tool for placement, but there has been no due notice. There is not even a validation of this test because we don't even have a test yet to validate. So the fact that this, I agree, Robin, the fact that the state can even be considering this even as an alternative for a graduation requirement, again, is horrendous. And that's something that we should be pushing back to the state, not just saying, okay, well, it's not the standard, it's one of 3 standards. Well, that's not good enough. This should not be utilized in any way, shape, or form for placement for students, not until due notice is achieved, which I believe the standard on due notice is 4 years. There are, other states who are refusing to use these test results for 12 years. New York State is refusing to utilize them for any placement purposes. And I think we should follow suit. There is no mandate from the state that tells us we have to do that. So, and I wanted to make one other comment, and this is about the parents' right to refuse. I do hope that the board does come up with something creative, and it sounds like you're really working hard to come up with something for parents to hang their hat on for those who wish to refuse the test. But I will say that I came across this one comment online, and basically what it says is, regarding the opt-out refusal, yes, it's not anything new to the state of New Jersey. We've had standardized testing for years, and people have always opted out. But legal guardians do have the right to refuse the test, period. That's a fact. Districts also are allowed to create your own policy regarding the refusal of the test. The policies simply have to coincide with NJAC 6A:8-4.1. The district has to administer the test to the child because that is the state mandate. But the child doesn't have to be present during testing, and nor does the child have to be present for a makeup test. The child who refuses the test will be simply marked absent from the test, not absent from school. And I think if people know this and understand that they're not going to have this punitive measure or any other punitive measure as a result of opting out, they're going to feel a whole lot better about making that decision as a parent as to whether or not this is potentially a useful tool or it isn't. And so, I ask the board to look closely at, dig deeper, look at all this stuff. You have a whole group of parents who are extremely informed, and there's a whole movement here to opt out of this test. And I think we need to be prepared for that, and I think we need to have options that are academic options for these students who opt out. And I'm really hoping that the board continues with all of these wonderful efforts with the state and also comes up with something that parents can feel really confident that you've done your best as educators and as board members and administrators to look out for our students and to act on behalf of our students. And so I think that's really all I had to say. I appreciate, again, all the work that you've done. I hope that there's going to be some kind of resolution that the parents can see, that the parents can participate in, and perhaps there's even an opportunity to convene a group who's interested in this particular topic, so that we can be assured that our students are not going to be negatively impacted. I think there'd be a lot of people interested in that. And that's it. I thank you all very much.
Michelle Coppola, 44 Vandermeer Drive. I'm kind of coming at this from a different angle. Personally, and I don't know if I am looking at it incorrectly, but when I think of the park exam, my thought is that we're going to be comparing ourselves to everyone who's taking it, districts who are way low performing compared to us. I think we're going to do fine. I really do. I'm not the least bit concerned about that. My concern is the other side of it, is the Common Core. And I've stood here for 3 years now talking about my concerns about Algebra 2 and the idea that it's hard. I mean, that kind of comment is, it really makes my skin crawl, to tell you the truth. It's hard. That's like I can't imagine anyone uttered that as a comment, but why? What are we doing? Why are we torturing them? Teach them the things they need to know to be successful. And if they're not prepared because we threw them into this change, then make an adjustment. And it can't take 3 years to do that because you've already hurt one of my kids. Now you're doing it to my second child. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand why. I do believe, and I'm with Mike 100%, the major changes have been in English or language arts and math. So, and predominantly the concerns are in math. So bring in the supervisor, bring in 5 teachers, and let's hear from our best and brightest teachers. Do they buy into this Common Core? Do they think it's the best thing we've ever done? Because to just do it because someone tells us to, or because it's what they say we need to, I don't believe it. I don't believe that we have to do it. I think that
If you tell me for CUSAC we have to touch on every single Common Core item, I'm with you, and I'm fine with that. But spend one day on the inane topics or the ones that kind of fall by the wayside, and make sure that our children in 4th grade or whatever grade it is, make sure if there's kids with the deer in the headlight look, we stop and say, you know what, it's too much material, the pace is too quick. I've been saying it for 3 years, why are we still doing it when time after time, we finally had 4 parents 2 weeks ago, stand up and say, this is an issue. Now we have Kristen saying, yeah, it's really hard. Oh my God, it's really hard. I'm kind of at my wit's end with the idea that we're just going to go along with this and keep going along with it. Anyway, just out of like trying to be concerned for the entire group. When it comes to the Algebra 1, I've been saying, and this is kind of to Karen's point, that we need to do a huge PR campaign. And even what Laura said, that parents have I think, I don't know, an inaccurate idea that 8th grade math is somehow remedial. That's ridiculous. It's absurd. When my daughter went to Franklin and Marshall for an interview, she's in calculus as a senior, and the interviewer said to her, how did you get into accelerated math? And she said, it wasn't accelerated math. This is a school to get into, you need a 3.9. It's a very, it's a challenging school, and they viewed it that way. So having pre-calculus is not going to kill you. And I know that Mike doesn't agree with me, but I just think that we have to look at, if we're going to do this whole Common Core thing and jam, 8th grade math, part of 8th grade math, half of 8th grade math in with Algebra 1, kids are starting to struggle, or kids are struggling, and we're compensating by tutoring. And I know that we can't seem to come up with a grasp on how many kids are getting tutored because they want to get it, from an A- to an A, but I'm telling you, over and over, if you go on to Basking Ridge Moms, no one's coming here, but believe me, there were 78 people who commented and said, they had concerns, my kid's getting tutored, I decided to tutor. The teachers are swamped. The teachers can't even squeeze you in to get a tutoring session unless you give them 2 or 3 weeks advance notice, because they're tutoring each other's kids. So teach it in school, do the right thing, work out a proper pace, and I think we'll be a lot more successful instead of this. Let's hear what the teachers say. If they stand here and say, this is great, our kids are going to be so much more brilliant if we start in 3rd grade and do it this way, fine. But don't bury the kids that missed the transition. Work with them and make sure you're making some reasonable compensations for them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Korn. I'm 23 Woodstone Road. It's K-O-R-N, Basking Ridge. I'm a little unorganized here. I wrote a lot of stuff down. I have to disagree with whoever just spoke, not about her whole math thing, but about the fact that she thinks that we're going to do so great in the PARCC testing, because I took the 5th grade English, and I'm pretty good at English. I went to college. I'm a little dumbed down from like my kids, like raising my kids for 15 years. But I was thinking about my 5th grader taking this test. She's not going to pass. Okay, just FYI, she's not going to pass. There's no way on God's earth she's going to read these sections of stories, go through the insane questions they ask you. I mean, come on. Let's get real. But that's besides the point. I just disagree with that. But I wanted to just do a little quote, because, this whole thing's coming down from the federal government. Arnie Duncan's is his baby, okay? So, and his quote was, "It was fascinating that some opposition to the Common Core state standards has come from, quote unquote, white suburban moms, becoming core critics because the new, harder exams have shown suddenly that, quote, their child isn't as brilliant as they thought they were." So that's, I'm not feeling like he's having my back, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't like the standards, but I feel like, I'm mad because now I think my kid's not smart enough. No, I think the Common Core is trying to just dumb our kids down. It's not because my kid's dumber. It's because I feel like, they're just trying to fit. It's like, everyone has the same shoe size now. It's all like jam our feet into the same shoe because they want everyone to be size 7. It's easier and cheaper. but that's, you know, how I feel about that. Also, so that brings me to like, what if, so we take the Common Core, so we all do it, and we fail miserably. This town, we tank it. We've done great on NJS, but we tank. We're like, I mean, New York State was 22% pass rate on the Common Core, on the park testing. So what's stopping the state from coming into Grass here and being like, oh, you guys suck. I mean, pardon my language. You guys can't teach. Like, what's stopping them from taking the next, like taking over a little bit more from us? I mean, it's a little paranoid, but why not? Arnie Bunkin thinks that I'm a crazy white suburban mom who thinks my kid's not smart enough now anymore. That's why I'm fighting this. So, you know, what's to stop the state from taking the next step if we don't do well on these tests? You know, we don't know. Who knows what's going on? Also with the math, you know, if the math is that much harder, just call it, like if math 8 is hard, now call it algebra 1. I mean, just rename it. I mean, so they're going to jam all these, like, so it's harder, there's more stuff involved. Is it harder that now algebra 1 is really algebra 2? I mean, is it there a secret? Not a secret, I mean, I don't mean to say you're hiding anything, but, you know, is there something I'm missing here, you know, with the curriculum that, you know, because math 8 was, there almost felt like back in the day, I have a, you know, a high school, middle school, and grammar school. So I've had kids who have had, like, change their math like 3 times as well. And I was at one of those meetings, one of the curriculum meetings at Cedar Hill like last year, because we were like, what? I had a first grader, I was like, what is this math? It was crazy math. That's what I was calling it. It's crazy, crazy math. And so we went to this meeting, and it wasn't really that helpful. I mean, it was just like a rote, like, presentation. You couldn't ask questions. So really, it was, you know, I could have looked it up online, I guess, and figured it out myself without someone actually presenting to me, because I would rather someone's explain it more to me, that this is better for my kid, and it really wasn't explained that way. Also I was wondering, so since we are, like the Common Core standards, I understand we've been doing it since 2010, but like the woman said that like with social studies, they're able to go in and pick the relevant standards to teach in social studies. So, and then in your presentation last time, you were saying how like the NJS taught on the relevant standards that were picked, I guess that they taught on, but then the park is teaching every standard. So that's telling me that we aren't even able to pick the relevant standards out. Our teachers aren't able to do that then. Since we're giving the park testing, does that mean that our, like, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, right? So does that mean that these teachers really can't, like, or our curriculum guide, are our hands tied now, so we can't pick the relevant standards anymore? That would make it easier to learn, or to like, or to make it more of a like the differentiation for our students. Is that what Park does? So it's changed. I have to say it. With the Common Core, we were able to once pick the relevant standards, and now we can't because of Park. That's my question. So has it changed that much? And I think that's. The other thing was like, since we don't know what the test is at all until January. So I was reading the question and answers, and we couldn't get a lot of these answers because you said you didn't have the information. You're not getting the information until January. So do we have, but what if January comes and goes and we still don't have the information? Do we have like a line in the sand where we say, well, if we don't get the information by this date, we are just not giving the test? Because I really don't think it would be fair to our kids to get this information in February and have like, what, 3 weeks before actually the middle school kids that take the test? Because they're taking it March 2nd. I mean, what's our stand on that? Like, how late will we let the state or Pearson give us this information before we say, sorry, it's not really fair to our students that we are going to give them something we haven't even seen until 2 weeks before. And that's it. Thank you. Thanks again for, I know you guys work hard. I'm not trying to attack, but, you know, this is our kids we're talking about. And I'm feeling like we're just not giving them what they deserve. Thank you.
Is there anything else for public comment? Okay, at this time I'd like to close public comment. Okay. Mr. McCary is going to attempt to answer some of the questions or comments.
So it was interesting listening to some of the questions. I had a meeting with the math supervisor, Ms. Wolf, last week, and I think I asked her probably 3/4 of what you all just asked. So I can tell you a little bit about what we talked about. Certainly, I agree from what's been said tonight that we need to do more work in communicating what's going on, especially as kids start moving into the middle school math. I think I'm going to find from her when I meet with her again about it that a lot of communication has happened. The question is it getting to anyone, and are people getting the right message? But I'll follow up with her on that. I know that she has a lengthy rubric that she's been working on for placement. I think it was discussed in curriculum committee and went through a process with them. So we want to try to make sure that we can get that communicated well to parents of students that would be experiencing that rubric. With respect to students doing fine on PARC, I really think that it's a relative thing when you look at testing and how well students do. I think, relatively speaking, our students in this district do well on all of the standardized tests. And when I say well, I mean relatively speaking to a comparison population. I suppose you could fail something and just fail it a lot less than other people. So from a comparison perspective, you look good. I don't know that that'll happen, we'll see. I agree about hearing from the teachers and asking them how things are going. In particular, I agree that almost everything that I've been hearing about as a complaint with respect to curriculum and the Common Core has been related to Algebra 2 or maybe a little bit about Algebra 1. So we sat and looked at the Algebra 2 curriculum, and I said, so what's the big shift? And in a nutshell, this is probably an oversimplification, but to avoid the use of the word stuff, I can tell you that the topics that were addressed more in the new Algebra 2 curriculum were trigonometry, probability, and statistics, where those topics were emphasized a lot less in Algebra 2 pre-Common Core adoption. And I can't see if Dr. Heineman is still down there, but he might shout out a correction if I screw some of this stuff up. I always tell him, shout something out if I mess up, because I don't want you to feel like you're attending the meetings for nothing. So, I can't see you, Dr. Heineman, but just give me a shout out if I mess up. Okay, thank you, sir. So we talked about those three topics and the timeline. She had a very nice color-coordinated spreadsheet that summarized the different topics, and I was very interested because I used to teach high school math. And in fact, I have an 8th grade daughter and a 10th grade son. My 8th grade daughter is experiencing the Algebra 1 Common Core, and my 10th grade son is experiencing the Algebra 2 Common Core. And I won't tell you what his grade is, but I bet he's doing worse than your kid. Anyway, so I certainly can appreciate the pain, since I spent most evenings tutoring one or both of them in math. With that said, what I've seen come home, I find challenging. This is just personally what I see coming home from my own kids. And I'm glad that they're challenged. I'm glad that they're working hard. It's not a lot of fun some nights. And, their grades are not always what I'd like to see them be, but I know that they're learning quite a lot, dealing with the challenges that they're faced. And the level of conversation that we have about a lot of the math problems that they're doing is much more in depth than what I remember doing when I was a student, and more in depth than some of what I taught. And I taught a lot of Algebra 1, a lot of Algebra 2, a lot of probability and statistics. So I appreciate the level. I don't think there's any dumbing down in the content. I think it's more challenging. We also spoke, Kristen Wolf and I, about the teachers and what they see and what is the issue with Park and, you know, what's the hubbub. We're getting more hubbub, I think, now this year because of the tests. And I agree that in my conversation with her, in as much as the curriculum is good and challenging, in short, it probably is somewhat of a challenge for the teachers because they're concerned about trying to make sure that students are well prepared, and there's a lot of content on the test. So I said to her, I said, you know, I think the important thing there is that we don't lose sight of the fact that we've all been in the classroom, and I don't know too many teachers in math that ever covered everything that was in the curriculum 100%. I never did. Sometimes you cover a little bit more, sometimes you cover a little bit less. And so, you know, we talked about the fact that I wanted her to make sure that she was talking to the teachers about how things were going and trusting their feedback, which isn't to say we're just going to stop and make, you know, let's all just creep at a snail's pace and, you know, everybody gets an A kind of scenario, but just to recognize the level of work and stress and or effort that's going on into it and make sure that they're using good judgment. And I told her that from my perspective, you can tell them that as far as I'm concerned, if they need to make some adjustments, that they've got my permission to do it for what it's worth. So, you know, I think that she appreciated that, and I trust that she'll communicate that with the teachers, and they'll work together to try to make adjustments. And I can certainly talk to her about finding some opportunities to communicate a little bit more about what's going on in that arena. And we also talked about the issue of preparation, the issue of being ready for Algebra 2, and what works. Does it work to ask students to work on material over the summer? What about the amount of time that we have to teach? Couldn't we alleviate some of this if there was actually more time to teach? Of course. Hence a lot of our discussions about reducing midterms and finals to quarterlies to no midterms, finals, or quarterlies. And that's, I think, a great step to try to create more time to teach and to relieve some of the pressure that maybe the teachers are feeling to cover content and the students might be feeling. So we talked about the school day, which is a topic that I've been speaking to the administration about at the high school, and we've been talking about a little bit in circles, just trying to think about what other things might we be able to do, whether it be with the schedule or what have you. Those are longer term possible solutions, but if you were to increase the number of minutes in the school day by 10%, okay? Even 10%, 1/10. You added 18 days compared to now. 18 classes of math, of English, of whatever subject. Might that not alleviate some of these difficulties? I'd like to believe yes. So, you know, I think that the time is a big factor and something that we should be looking at to see if we can't use it more efficiently. And I know that Mr. Howard is working on some ideas, and we'll be looking to convene a committee of people to help him look at some things in January. So that's a longer term thing. But I think that trusting your teachers and giving them the opportunity to collaborate and try to be flexible and try to come up with better ways to do things, combined with some more communication, especially at the middle school level, about choices is very important. I fully agree that there is a historical dynamic. I remember having been a scheduling entity here at Annan when I worked here, what the curriculum was, how the schedule flowed, what the math levels were, pre-algebra, algebra, 7th grade honors algebra, 8th grade honors geometry, and so forth. And I do believe that, there's a lot of folks out there that are interested in having the highest level as fast as they can, whether it's good for their child or not. I could raise my hand right now and talk to you about why my son is in honors algebra 2. I don't know. Was it the right choice? Maybe, maybe not. But I think we are all victims as parents of, wanting to make sure that we're getting the best for our children, and sometimes that might mean that we push for a level that maybe isn't the right level, and that's a challenge too. So we have to work on that and recognize that what maybe was Algebra 1 in one person's mind 5 years ago needs to be thought of differently now. And 8th grade math should be thought of differently. And what pre-algebra should, it's funny, someone said, I think it was Mrs. Korn, talked about renaming it. And I said it's funny that she said that because it was exactly what I said to Mrs. Wolf. I said, man, it's kind of like maybe there's a renaming possibility here. But one of the issues that you have to keep in mind is that the test the students are taking is directly tied to the course name that they're experiencing. So you have to be careful. And we talked about, maybe even naming things Algebra 1 Part A and Algebra 1 Part B, and that students take the test when they finish Algebra 1 Part B, or something to that effect. So we had a really good conversation, I thought, and maybe when some of those ideas get more solidified, she could talk about them more publicly. But given your comments tonight, I share with you the private meeting that we had with the hope that you will recognize that I understand and I'm trying to lead this issue well for you.
We're now up to board forum. Does anyone have anything they want to say?
One quick thing I just want to comment on that I meant to comment during curriculum report. I'm thrilled that there's going to be research writing component added to the, I think it was in the social studies. And just anecdotally, I want to share that with my 2 college kids, and especially my 2013 graduate and his peer group. A lot of them have reported back having arrived at college, and they never really did a true research paper, and so it's kind of like, headfirst in the deep end. So I think it's great that we're going to do that, and we'll give them a chance to get the feet wet a little bit before they, get to the point of college. That's all. Thanks.
I learned something from your presentation. Thank you. It was factual.
Okay. It's only like a second now. Yeah, thank you.